enjoyed as it began the first experiment of republicanism in the modern era. And this is a prayer that was taken from that circular letter to the states. It says, Almighty God, we make our earnest prayer that thou would keep the United States in thy holy protection, that thou would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, and entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another and for their fellow citizens of the United States at large. And finally, that thou wouldst most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, without a humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. Grant our supplication, we beseech thee, through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Amen. President George W. Washington, but he wasn't president, 1783.
Very good. Yes. Very good.
Also, our Constitution is so important to our individual freedoms and our inalienable rights. And I read the preamble the other day, and I just got choked up thinking of the people that sacrificed so much for us to have the freedom that we have today, and mainly to be able to pray out loud without persecution. So I've asked, who's reading the preamble? Sam's going to read the preamble to our Constitution that gives us our inalienable rights.
Thank you. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Essentially, it asserts that all individuals are born with inherent rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Written in 1787 during the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia.
All right, the flow for tonight. Again, I've never done this before, so I asked wise counsel. I asked Michelle and our Bruce Fikes, our not old, but our past president, chairman. You know, what should this look like? And they helped guide me through what this night should look like. And I just wanted to make sure that you're the center of attention and the candidates. Nothing is scripted. There's not been any questions given in advance. The questions will come from you. So we're going to have an opportunity for the first 20 minutes. Josh will speak for 10 minutes uninterrupted, and then Dave will speak for 10 minutes uninterrupted, and then we'll have question and answer time. And how we're going to do that, and I will go back over it, is that for 10 minutes, you're going to be able to ask Josh McCoon questions. You're going to have to come up, get the mic, and stand in front of the computer so he can see you and hear you. And then we'll do the same with David. And then they'll get 5 minutes at the very end to wrap up and say whatever else they want to say uninterrupted. So, thank you, David, for attending. Thank you, Josh, for attending. We're excited. One of you will lead us and guide us into 2026, which, as you know, is one of the most important elections Georgia will ever have. I have a shirt that says, "Make Georgia Great Again." And not that we're not great, but we have improvements to make. So we're going to start the night with Josh. I'll go to the computer and make sure he can hear me. Josh, you ready? All right.
Yes, ma'am.
We've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all this evening. My name is Josh McCoon. I'm currently chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. I'm honored to be Donald Trump's choice to be chairman of the Republican Party for 2 more years. And that's really where I'd like to begin. When I was elected in 2023, we were facing a lot of challenges. One of the challenges we were facing is that we had not won a federal statewide election since 2016. We all know what happened in 2020. We all suffered together through the 2022 Senate election and runoff that didn't end up the way we wanted it to. And so for 2024, the Democrats were basically already beginning to celebrate. Say, Georgia's split, there's no way it's going back, we own Georgia. At the same time, my immediate predecessor in this role, David Schaefer, and quite a few other Republican presidential electors were under investigation by Fani Willis, the Democratic District Attorney of Fulton County. And just 3 months into my term, David, Sean Still, and Kathy Latham were all indicted as part of this sham, phony, fake witch hunt that Fani has pursued. And so we found ourselves in this unprecedented position of having to fight an election, try to win the presidential election for Donald Trump and the other Republicans up and down the ballot, while also fighting a legal war in Fulton County against the Democratic District Attorney who wanted to take away basic freedoms, basically to say, if you're in the losing side of an election, you can have your freedom taken away for decades. So how did we, address those challenges? I feel like the report card that a political party gets every 2 years is at the ballot box. And for us, it was on November 5th, 2024. I would say we got an A grade in November of 2024. We elected Donald Trump president on a 115,000 vote majority, the first federal statewide election win for Georgia Republicans in 8 years. We elected 9 Republican members to the U.S. House of Representatives. That's the difference between an America First agenda moving through the House and sham impeachments being issued by a Democratic Speaker of the House. We returned majorities, Republican majorities, to the state Senate and the state House. We shifted over 130 of Georgia's 159 counties to the right in 2024 versus 2020. Our election victory was so total and so complete that the Democrats in Georgia fired their party chairman in the middle of her term. That is how strongly we were able to win this state. And how did we do that? We did it by executing a bold strategy. There are really 3 components to it. Number 1, you've got to have money to run a political organization. You want to communicate with people, you want to have staff to organize volunteers, you want programs. It's very nice to say all the things that you want to do, but you've got to have money to make those things happen. We raised and spent over $23 million in the 2024 election cycle between money we raised, money that was transferred in from the Republican National Committee, and the Trump campaign because of the trust they had in our executive leadership team. So we had the money we needed to execute our strategy. Secondly, we had a tremendous field program. It was called Trump Force 47. If you dealt with a Trump Force 47 staffer, that person was a Georgia Republican Party employee. If you worked out of a Trump Force 47 office, that office was leased and largely paid for by the Georgia Republican Party. And we did something different in the 2024 election cycle, and that is instead of focusing on swing voters, we focused on voters that had not voted in a long time, so-called low propensity voters, that we knew if they went to the ballot box, they would vote for Donald Trump. And they did. We had over 4 million people vote early in this election, and over 800,000 of them had not voted in the 2020 election. That's because of the hard work of the staff and the volunteers dynamiting those folks off of their sofas and getting them in to go vote. So we had a tremendous field program that was wildly successful. But the other thing we did that was really important was our election integrity program. It really had 3 components. We went and fought the Democrats at the courthouse, at the state house, and in the precincts. At the state house, we passed 3 landmark election integrity bills in 2024. Just one provision of one of them was to equalize ballot access. So for the first time in my lifetime, there were left-wing political parties on the presidential ballot, not just the right-wing Libertarian Party. What did that mean? It meant 40,000 voters chose those 3 left-wing candidates instead of Kamala Harris. In an election decided by 115,000 votes, that's the difference between 0 recount requests, 0 post-election lawsuits, and having a battle for months and months over who won the election in Georgia. So we were very successful at the state house. We were also successful at the courthouse. We deployed over 500 lawyers in the state. We filed more lawsuits, intervened in more lawsuits, and won more election integrity lawsuits than ever before in the history of the Georgia Republican Party. Just one of those lawsuits that was so consequential was successfully defending Senate Bill 202. And just one provision of Senate Bill 202 was to require that to get an absentee ballot, someone had to place a wet signature on a piece of paper and prove that they were a flesh and blood human being. That meant 374,000 people who voted absentee in 2020 did not vote at all in the 2024 election. That's because of the success of the legal aspect of our election integrity program. But we also, with your help, recruited more poll watchers than we've ever had before in our history and covered more poll watching shifts than we ever had before in the history of the Georgia Republican Party. And all of that work did two things. It made sure we had a fairer election. It made sure the Democrats were not able to do to us in 2024 what they did to us in 2020. But the other thing it did is it got a lot of people who I talked to in 2023 who said, Josh, this is rigged. I'm not voting anymore. I don't have trust in the system. When they saw how aggressive we were being across the board, they said, you know what? I am going to vote one more time. And it got a lot of people out to vote that otherwise were not going to vote in 2023. And again, that 115,000 vote margin, you can point to all these different things that led to having that level of victory in Georgia. So we were able to successfully raise money. We were able to successfully deploy an excellent field program, and in my opinion, America's best election integrity program. And doing all those things together won 2024. At the same time, we raised and spent money to defend our electors against Fani Willis's fake phone and witch hunt, including filing a motion to disqualify her that unmasked the corrupt behavior she was participating in, funneling $750,000 of Fulton County taxpayer money to her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, to persecute David Schaefer, Sean Steele, and Kathy Latham, President Trump, and others. And because we were able to successfully do that, the Georgia Court of Appeals has thrown her off the case, and we are very close to seeing that case totally dismissed and our people completely exonerated. You know, in Arizona, they were selling their party headquarters. In Michigan, the party went broke trying to do these two things at once. But in Georgia, we were able to keep the lights on. So we had a tremendous 2024 cycle. But what about 2026? 2026, we've got two really big goals. They're not the only goals, but they're two big goals. One is we got to fire John Ossoff, California's 3rd United States Senator. He's got to go. We cannot give him 6 more years representing Georgia. He's a far left-wing politician. I used to say that he and John Fetterman were the most unqualified members of the U.S. Senate. If I ever meet Senator Fetterman, I'm going to have to apologize to him because Senator Ossoff has proven himself to be the most far-left lunatic member of the U.S. Senate that we've seen in a very long time. So we've got to replace him with an America First conservative. We've got the best opportunity in America to do that right here in Georgia. And then in the governor's race, Georgia has one of the most powerful governor's offices in America. And the Democrats are coming for that office. They know that winning statewide in Georgia is the key to their 2028 presidential election strategy. So we're going to have two of the most highly contested elections in America. The Senate race alone is probably going to be a $500 million race. So you've got to have people in these positions who are prepared to meet those challenges, who are prepared to put together a world-class field program and an election integrity program. You don't have to wonder if I can do that, because I've proven that I can lead this team to victory, and I can do it again in 2026. I look forward to the opportunity to answer your questions this evening, but again, I hope that I can win your vote and support in Dalton so that we can continue this positive momentum and win again in 2026. And, you know, President Trump's pretty good at picking winners. That's why he's endorsed me for re-election, because he knows how vital it is to put the A team on the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Use the microphone, please.
There's the microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, whoa. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Thank you, Thomas County. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Laura, for having me, bringing us down here. It's been wonderful driving all over the state and seeing how amazing our state is. One of the things that blows me away is that every time I think about the liberals that are out there that talk about, the world's overcrowded and that kind of thing, that they've never been to South Georgia. It just that you can look in any direction, there's nobody for 5 miles in either direction. So Trump talked about winning. He talked about winning so much that you're going to get tired of winning. And this is one of my favorite videos, and I keep playing it everywhere. It's only 18 seconds, but take a listen.
And you say, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
I love that. I love that bit. Oh, he's going to keep on going for me. So one of the things that blew me away was that in the last couple weeks, Trump was over in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And the folks over in Qatar walked around on Air Force One and said, this jalopy is 40 years old. And they donated a $1 billion airplane to the Air Force that's going to become the new Air Force One. And the very same day, Trump ended up signing $600 billion worth of deals that's going to be fantastic for American business. So I'm looking forward to more winning like that. All right, let's get serious. President Trump says that we have 3 clear mandates, right? Number 1 is rebuild the party. Number 2 is get out the vote. And number 3 is protect the ballot. I'm running for chairman for the same reason that I ran the second vice chair, to protect the ballot, to get rid of the machines in Georgia. My work has been cited in President Trump's summary of election fraud. I know that the 2020 election was stolen, and in Qatar last week, the president, before 10,000 soldiers, said it again that he won 3 times. All right, so he's not confused. Our chairman dances around whether or not 2020 was stolen. Trump again said, 3 times. He's not confused, I'm not confused, but we're still using the same voting machines in Georgia right now. President Trump signed Executive Order 14248 to get rid of the machines, and Sam's been working really hard on getting us to paper ballots, and I fully support that. However, our legislative agenda this year was delayed by 22 days because of lack of preparation. You're not going to win any ball games if you're showing up to the field late, 22 days late. As your chairman, I guarantee you that I am going to work with President Trump, and we're going to work hand in hand with him to carry out his agenda to make voting in Georgia great again. I will not fail President Trump. When elected, the very first telephone call I'm going to make is going to be to Governor Kemp, and I'm going to beg him for a special session to get rid of these machines. We cannot wait until next year. And if he says no, I'm going to call him the next day, and the next day, and the next day until we get that meeting. Let's talk about getting out the vote for a second. Across the state, we have volunteers that volunteer for Trump Force 47. And when I look around the counties that are out there, they keep asking me the same question. Why aren't those people coming back and participating in their county parties? And the reason is that we really have to modernize. We need to upgrade. We've got to bring in younger people. It's going to take a lot of people if we're going to create Georgia Force 26 to replace that. Tiffany Savage is a very close friend of mine, and she is the one that invented Trump Force 47. She's agreed to work with me and with the state party to help make that happen here in Georgia. You heard the chairman talk about we returned a majority, right? That's very careful coding for we didn't win more House seats or any more Senate seats. And we have 5 House seats that were within a 2% margin of losing. We've got to strengthen those. The Democrats are going to double and triple down. They're going to add more money. They are committed to taking those seats from us. To do all of this, it's going to take money. Josh just told you, we know he raised $23 million. That's not true. He raised $3 million organically, and some of that money came from people like me and people like you that give on an automatic basis. The other $20 million came from the RNC and came from Trump Force 47. We can make a huge dent. If we can get 1% of all the Republicans in the state to just give $20 a month, that will turn into $400,000 per month statewide, $4.8 million per year. That will move the needle. We are the 8th largest economy in the United States of America, and bringing in $3 million in Georgia is a rounding error. It's embarrassing. Under my administration, we're going to shatter all of the past fundraising records. But to get that money, we have to rebuild trust. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not people can trust me, and I think that's nonsense. I run a $100 million business taking care of people's investment money. They trust me with their entire lives. I build plans, financial plans and budgets to help people make sure that when they get to retirement, they're not going to run out of money. The Georgia GOP doesn't have a financial plan. We don't even have a budget. And right now, we don't even have 100% of the Georgia leadership giving to the Georgia GOP. On every other hospital board and every other charity board I've ever served on, I've always made sure that people gave, that 100% of the board gave money. Because you can't go out and ask people to give money if your board's not giving either. Josh also told you that President Trump trusted his team at the Georgia GOP. But what he didn't tell you is that the RNC forced him to fire his executive director, who's his best friend. My job is going to be to restore truth, trust, and transparency. And when elected, one of the first things we're going to do to restore truth and trust is we're going to doge the Georgia GOP. We're going to find out where the money's going. We're going to make sure that good decisions are being made. So how are we going to grow? Donald Trump said he ran for president because he saw his country being mismanaged. I see the same thing going on with the Georgia GOP. We need to stop wasting money and make better decisions, or we are never going to hear the end of people saying, I give to the candidate and not to the party. If we build an organization that shows gratitude, respect, financial transparency, we will grow exponentially. If we hope to win in 2026, we must have a solid plan, a solid growth plan. You can look at my website, and we've got at least 14 different initiatives for growing the party. Am I at the 1 minute mark right now? Okay. Including the Communications Committee. Right now, the Georgia GOP is in broadcast only mode. They don't really care what you have to say. There's no way for them to receive the information and to, figure out what it all means from all the different counties. We've got to turn into a true two-way street of information. We've got to have a citizens lobbying committee. Every time I go to the Gold Dome, there's a ton of people that are there. We can organize and get them trained to go chase the legislation that's important to us. To attract young people, we need to have a Young Republican Scholarship. $35,000. We could give 100 kids $350 a piece so that they don't have to choose between going on summer vacation with their friends or coming to hang out with us at the state convention. We need true minority outreach to Asian, Hispanic, and Black Republicans. We need to give them the same tools as if they were the 160th county in Georgia. We've also got to work on a rural sheriff's program to make it so that the counties that voted for Trump that have Democrats that are in the sheriff's office will flip over. If that happens, it becomes a domino effect. And more Republicans will be running for offices, and that will strengthen the county party with additional qualifying fees. My dad taught me that the character of a man is revealed if he keeps his word. The chairman has failed in his promise to correct the corporate paperwork. He did not protect our brand against the insurgent Republican coalitions across the state. He does not get competitive bids on quotes from vendors. He gives large no-bid contracts to his karaoke partner. He spent our money on his personal expenses most recently, and he hired his best friend to be the executive director, and they gave him an outrageous $20,000 severance package. I am done with politics as usual. I'm not here to burn it down. I'm here to grow. We need a chairman that unites. We need a chairman that the grassroots trust. We need a chairman that protects the party and grows it. The chairman right now wants you to think that we can't win without him as an attorney. I know that we can't win without all of you. I'm David Cross, and I want to be your next chairman for the Georgia GOP. Thank you.
All right, this portion will be the question and answer time. And again, we're going to start with Josh. And it'll be 10 minutes of him talking. Your question does not count against his time, if that makes any sense. So he's got 10 full minutes to answer questions. And if he answers one, he answers one. If he answers 2, he answers 10. It's up to him how long he wants to answer both he and David. So this is what I need you to do. If you want to ask Josh a question, I just need you to come up. you're going to get this microphone and you're going to stand in front of my computer so he can see you and hear you. And you're going to say, hey, my name is Laura Reed. I'm from Thomas County and I'm a state delegate. And then ask your question. So announce who you are, where you're from, and your question, and stay there until he's done answering your question. Got it? Okay, all right. Josh, did you hear that? Did you hear
Yes,
that?
ma'am, I think so. I think I heard most of it, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
all right, they're gonna come to the computer, and they're gonna ask a question to you, and you've got 10 minutes of talking. So you've got 10 minutes
Yes,
to
ma'am.
answer questions. And does not, when they ask a question, does not count against your time. I've asked them to state their name, where they're from, and to stay here until you're done with their question.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
good? Okay, awesome, all right.
Who's first?
I'll go first.
All right.
Hi Josh, my name is Michelle Kimbler and I'm a state delegate from the Thomas County Party. I am curious to know what your vision will be for the upcoming term with regard to the state committee.
Yes, ma'am. So with regard to the state committee, my hope is that we will have regular meetings, that we will do what we can to involve more state committee members. We have quite a few new state committee members. We tried having some in-person, longer state committee meetings, got kind of mixed reviews on that. But I think what I would propose is meetings on Saturday so we can have a longer meeting, not just a pro forma session. And looking for the state committee to do some more working committees so that we can get more people engaged and involved in what we are doing. One of the things I mentioned earlier about the last 2 years that was really unique is that I don't think ever before in our history we've been asked to simultaneously manage a criminal defense while fighting a political campaign. And so one of the good things about the next 2 years is it'll sort of like be throwing a 50-pound rucksack off our back and really being able to do a lot more in terms of political action, even beyond what we did. And being able to score the victory we did with that additional load off, I think we're going to be able to do so much more in 2026.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Josh. My name is Will Cooley from Thomas County. I'm a delegate for Thomas County. A very simple question, and I want a simple answer, a yes or no. Do you support using paper ballots in state elections in the state of Georgia?
Yes, sir. That's been the position of the
You say yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
said yes.
That's good. Thank you very much, and thank you for participating in it.
That's been the position of the Georgia Republican Party for the last 4 years.
Go ahead, I wasn't aware of that. Well, I'm doggone. You taught me something. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Chuck Hand, Taylor County, State Delegate. I know that Trump Force 47 was financed by the Georgia GOP, therefore the Georgia GOP can in fact take credit for all of its success. My question is this: who has the possession of all of the cleaned up and accurate data that we all helped create? Is it the RNC, the Trump team, the Georgia or the Georgia GOP? And will this data be available to the counties and districts going into the 26th cycle?
Yes, sir. So every state and territorial party in the country has a licensing agreement with the RNC on what's called a GOP Data Center. And the information that was collected on Campaign Sidekick goes into improved data center. And so, yes, that information is made available, will be made available to district parties, to county parties. So that will be made available, and it will be made available through a platform like Campaign Sidekick or Numenar. So those are software programs that are kind of the face, but that actual data that you're talking about is housed at the Republican National Committee and made available to us through a licensing agreement.
Hello, Josh Fields, Cersei from Brady County. How you doing? I've heard you on a couple. Good. I've heard you on a couple of occasions say the only way we can get rid of the Dominion voting system in Georgia is to have a legislative solution or get a new Secretary of State so he can decertify the machines. So my question for you is this: since we already have laws on the books, 21-2-300 and 21-2-334, which allow the counties to already go to hand-marked paper ballots using the emergency ballot procedures already outlined in the rules and regulations. And we also have 22-437 that requires a full hand count of all races at the precinct and certification before the ballots are sealed and sent to the central office. What I want to know is, why can't we just follow the law, and why haven't you advocated for just follow the existing law we have and mandate that we do this? I mean, if the counties rise up, and this would happen if it was directed from the party level, we could get this done all across the state.
Well, of course, the Georgia Republican Party doesn't run any county government. Those are run by elected officials. And I know that you and others have been making the case that you just outlined, and it would obviously require a county government to agree and to take that action. When I discussed that with people, what I've said is it would probably lead to litigation with the Secretary of State's office, and that's fine. But you got to have a county government that's willing to take the step and finance it. So when I talk about the two avenues to do this, I'm talking about avenues to do it that don't involve litigation. There have been several attempts to litigate our way to paper ballots. Of course, the Curling case is probably the most famous example of that. So far, none of those cases have resulted in judicial decisions that have gotten us to paper ballots. So I think when we talk about the quickest way there, the very quickest way there, would be obviously for the legislature to change the law and make it clear that the Dominion voting machines can no longer be utilized. An equally rapid way for this to happen would be to elect a Secretary of State who would decertify the machines on day one. And I hope, given the amount of energy and concern around this issue, that we're going to see a Secretary of State candidate emerge that will make that their platform, that they want to decertify the machines on day one, which will then force legislative action. You're kind of turning it the other way around. Instead of a strategy that you're describing that would rely on, I believe, years of expensive litigation that may or may not be successful. But either way, the Georgia Republican Party remains committed to a paper ballot solution. And we're going to continue to advocate for it at the General Assembly. We're going to ask candidates about it. When we host candidate forums for governor in the primary, for lieutenant governor in the primary, for Secretary of State in the primary, we're going to ask these questions. We're going to put them on the spot. We're going to make them commit themselves to where they are on this issue. So we are fully committed and remain fully committed to moving us away from the Dominion voting machines.
We could have used that help. We could have used that help all the last 2 years. We've been very much appreciated because we had numerous state election boards meetings we went to presenting this emergency paper ballot solution, as well as multiple press conferences at the Capitol with speakers bringing forth evidence and so forth. So I just hope we haven't missed the boat to get it done, because I think we're in an emergency situation and we need to force their hand somehow. Thank you.
Every time that I've been asked to participate in any kind of election reform, I've done it. I think I'm the only one in this room that can say they ran against Brad Raffensperger for Secretary of State in 2018 to try to stop us from moving from Diebold electronic voting machines to another electronic voting solution. So I would certainly compare my record favorably, I think, to anyone on the question of whether or not we should move to paper ballots in the state. It remains the position of the Georgia Republican Party. The state committee passed a resolution on it during my term. We made it very clear in every way we possibly could that that is the solution in Georgia to move to paper ballots.
So as a follow-up to that, let's set an example at the Georgia convention coming up in 3 weeks to go to hand-marked paper ballots for our election of state officers. That would be setting an example for the whole state that we can do it, and we can show how we've done it in the second district, and it's been done in other districts as well. So let's advocate for that. Thank you.
So I guess if I'm being asked about the voting method at the state convention, that's going to be up to the convention to decide. I will tell you, one of the number one issues that I heard when I was running for chairman in 2023 is people said, Josh, don't hide behind the secret ballot when you vote for chairman of the Republican National Committee. We want to know who you voted for. We want to be able to hold you accountable. And every single person that attends the state convention in Dalton is representing other Republicans. In some cases, hundreds of thousands of other Republicans. So, if it was up to me, I think a standing vote makes a lot of sense, because then you're actually holding yourself accountable to the people that elected to represent them at the state convention in Dalton. But again, that decision will be up to the state convention to decide.
Josh, Sam Carnline from way down in Grady County, where we go peanuts, cotton, pecans, and pine trees. You can make a lot of paper ballots out of the pine trees. Now, I got involved in the Georgia Republican Party after I saw that our legislators were doing nothing about the 2020 election being stolen in Georgia. I think a lot of us got involved in it at that time. We still are voting on the same system that we were voting on in 2020. I believe that the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party gets an automatic bully pulpit that they can put down their platform and they can speak out for certain things. I know that you say that you're for paper ballots. The Georgia Republican Party says it's for paper ballots. But I've not ever heard you get on any kind of platform and, so to speak, preach for paper ballots and to get rid of these machines. 64% of Georgians, according to the primary in 2024, said that they wanted to go to hand-marked paper ballots. What will you do if you get reelected for chairman to make it clear and to try to make a path forward to get rid of the machines in Georgia so Georgia can go back to trusting our elections? Because I'm telling you, that's the biggest problem that Republicans are having in this state. You mentioned that people came out and voted. Well, they did, because you had Donald J. Trump on the platform and it was too big to rig. That's the reason people came out and voted. And I got one more question, and this is a question. Down here in District 2, way down here on the Florida line, we know the people, we all know one another. We sent a delegate to the National Republican Convention that District 2, I wrote you a letter along with some other people and asked you not to allow this person to go to the National Republican Convention, and he got slipped in there and went anyway. Can you explain to me how that happened? Thank you.
Yes, unfortunately, we had quite a few people that got elected, and I think probably everybody in this room knows the process, but at the National Convention cycle, we go through this process like we're going through this year, and the congressional districts elect a certain number of delegates, and then the state elects a certain number of at-large delegates. We had quite a few people, I don't remember the exact number, but it was quite a few, that were unable to serve. And so it fell to the executive committee to fill those slots. We obviously wanted to have a full delegation. We wanted Georgia to be fully represented. We wanted all of our delegates to be cast for President Trump. And so that's the process that was followed. It's a process that is consistent with our rules. It's a process that John White, our longtime parliamentarian, suggested, and that's what we followed. With regard to the issue about advocacy for paper ballots, I appreciate the fact that you cited the statistic about the straw poll question on the ballot, because those are straw poll questions that we proposed during my administration and got voted and approved so that they would be placed on the ballot, so that someone like you advocating for paper ballots would have that statistic, would be armed with that information. I also worked with you probably remember, at the January 2024 State Committee meeting to pass our own resolution regarding paper ballots, a resolution that was adopted unanimously and was transmitted to the Georgia General Assembly. So I'm always open to suggestions on other ways that we can communicate our position, but I don't think there's a single elected official in the state that's confused about my position or the Georgia Republican Party's position on moving to paper ballots. I do think that we have a great opportunity in 2026 to use the platform of the Georgia Republican Party by hosting candidate forums and asking these questions and getting candidates on the record You know, Governor Kemp signed the Religious Freedom Bill into law on April 4th that I proposed 11 years ago, that we've been fighting for a long time. I believe he did that in part because he was asked that question and actually wound up signing a pledge to do it. So we're about to enter a season where we've got opportunities on paper ballots on a variety of issues to get candidates committed that are going to occupy these agenda-setting positions. So we ought to do that. You know, we ought to do that. We ought to take every opportunity to advocate and push for these positions, including moving to paper ballots.
You've got a minute left when we have this out.
I won't be long. Hi, Josh. This is Allison from Lee County. I just have to tell you, you look good, you sound good. You have faced some heavy criticism and some verbal attacks from various people throughout the state, and it saddens some of us that have to hear it. It's hard to distinguish between what is true and what is false, and getting the real information. How are you doing, and how do you stay strong? What gives you strength?
So I certainly rely on my faith, and I appreciate you asking me that question. I will tell you, I've run for public elected office 5 times. I've run for this office 1 other time. I've never faced the kind of toxic, negative campaigning and false campaigning that I've faced in this campaign. Not even my wife or family have been spared from these attacks. And it's very unfortunate, you know, because supposedly we're all supposed to be on the same side. I've never had a Democrat, a far-left Democrat, say the kinds of things and do the kind of things that have happened during the course of this campaign. But what you have to do is stay focused on the mission. And I do sometimes joke with people, I wonder what would be said if we lost the election, if this is what is being said when we won the election. But, you know, you just have to stay positive. You have to stay focused on, you know, who's the most qualified person to lead the party in 2026. And I think the best person in America to make that call is President Donald J. Trump. And he's looked at the candidates and he's made his choice clear. He is letting people know that I'm his choice to lead this party for the next 2 years because he knows what we achieved for him in November of 2024. Thank you for the question.
6 seconds. You did great. Thank you, Josh.
I got a yes, no question.
You got 6 seconds.
I'm Sharon Johnson. I'm Sharon Johnson. I live in Thomas County. To follow up on Sam Carmine's question, when you're considering people to go to the national convention, do you look at criminal background checks?
That's a good question because that's been an issue actually for state party office as well, where there wasn't total disclosure of some things in the background that created some issues later on. But, you know, our nominating committee process is a fairly simple process. There's a resume submitted typically, not always, but typically, and there's an interview conducted, and that's the process.
All right, thank you, Josh. Y'all give him a thank you very much. Same process. If you don't mind coming up, get the mic, introduce yourself, because I want everybody to hear you and your question. Not everybody has good hearing because, you know, we're all kind of older. And then you can go back to your seat or you can stand up here with David, whatever you want to do. So, first question for David Cross.
I have a question.
Okay, come on, Michelle.
You'll just have to pass the mic.
Hi, David. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm Michelle, and I'm a Thomas County delegate to the state convention. I am curious to know if you will expand a little more on your position about the role you feel the state executive board should play with regard to incumbent Republicans and other Republican candidates that are running for office, whether it be a state senate, state house, or even our constitutional offices, as far as the process for vetting them to be true Republicans.
1 second, hold that. Okay, so the question is about, you know, how we're going to engage the state committee, or the executive committee. So here's the thing: the executive committee right now does not. That's not their function. But part of my agenda is to create an accountability committee, and the accountability committee will be formed for two primary purposes. One is going to be to evaluate our existing elected officials and have them ranked and scored against what our party platform is, and if they're voting Republican or not. If they're not voting Republican, we need to have some conversations. I also want to use that committee to help identify qualified candidates and vet them to see if their beliefs are in alignment. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from Thomas County. 2024 election, this space was filled with people who wanted to be engaged. And I found it very difficult to find the tools from the Georgia GOP to help us engage our community. We were relying on our own resources, our own talents and skills, and even the GOP website was extremely benign. So, what is your plan to help small counties like us become engaged in such a large pool, because we cannot compete with the Atlanta area?
All right, so Chuck actually asked a similar question last night, and the chairman said in 2023 that he would create a resource center, and that never happened. So that's another failed promise. All right, and one thing y'all need to know is that I don't lie. If you hear the chairman telling you that I'm lying about his wife, and his kid, I don't attack anybody like that. I've only attacked him on things that I can bring 100% receipts for. So we've got to be, telling the truth about what's happening. All right, and as far as like supporting the counties, we've got to have a resource center that makes it so that if you become chairman, you don't have to go out and reinvent the wheel. There's either going to be human beings that are mentors that can help mentor you, or we're going to have a resource center that's online, that's going to have things like YouTube videos and things like that, where you can walk through the process of what it takes in order to be successful. I'm also going to roll out former Chairman Schaefer's 5-star program, which was a tool that was used to help evaluate small, medium, and large counties to help them figure out what are the things that they need to do in order to be successful and relevant. Thank you. I feel like that guy from Ferris Bueller. Anybody?
Sam Carline, David, I know you, you know me, we've been involved in some election integrity chasing for quite a while. You in the north end and me in the field and a lot of people in this room on the southern end. I got involved because I wanted to be utilized. I became a chair for my precinct, not a chair. I became a delegate for my precinct, then to my county, and then on up to District 2 because I wanted to be used. Do you have a plan to take people like me that want to get involved and involve us? Plug us in somewhere.
Yes, so if you go onto my website, Cross for GA or Cross for Georgia, either one will take you there. There are 13 or 14 initiatives that are on there. Initiatives or committees that we need to roll out in order to be successful. And all you need to do is click the button on the top right-hand side that says Contact Us. Let me know how you would like to be involved. I'm not a one-man band. I cannot do it all. My job is to go above the trees, look at the big picture, and figure out which way is going to get us to winning. All right, and then to call down to the troops and tell the folks that are down there, here's what we need to do. I can't do it all, but on there are plenty. There's a lot that's on there, and I haven't even downloaded all the other ideas that I want to have on there because it might seem overwhelming. But I keep being accused of being the guy that doesn't have a plan. The guy that doesn't have a plan doesn't put 14 things on his website about how he's going to rebuild the party. All right, our current chairman is telling you that he has a plan. And his plan is keep the winning coach on the field, right? And right now, he thinks he's Kirby Smart, but he's really Mark Richt, and he's got a lot of problems that are going on inside the Georgia GOP, just the same way that Mark Richt had a lot of players being arrested or about to be arrested. Listen, it's, you know, and here, you know what? So somebody else got another question. I want to play something for you. This was from Gwinnett County. All right.
Was received by or misinformed. The Trump endorsement announcement was received by this room full of laughter.
The election's turn in the Georgia Republican Party. He will never let you down. You've heard it straight from the president. I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
The grassroots out across the state, y'all know the truth. Josh McCune did let you down. He's ignored the rural counties that are out here. And we can't have that. You guys are the backbone. You're the backbone of everything that's going to help us win in 26. Without you, we will fail. And we have to rebuild that trust.
No, go ahead.
I'm Lee Bryan, a Thomas County resident. Can you tell us a little more about the Schaefer's 5-star plan?
All right, so it's a really long document, but one of the things that it has on there is like for small counties, you know, or basically any of the counties. Like one of the first things that's on there is, do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a clean meeting space? This place is beautiful, all right? There's some other counties around the state that are struggling. Do you have a process for regular meetings? You know, what's the setup? I mean, there's a lot of things on. Do you have speakers? I mean, look, I gotta tell you, I'm in Gwinnett County. We got 1 million people that live there. We don't have this kind of speaker system. Y'all have got, this is fantastic. Ours is garbage. In Gwinnett County, ours is garbage in Gwinnett County. The microphones are constantly cutting out, the batteries are running out, and it's awful. This thing's the bomb. I want these things everywhere. And you know what? If I'm the chairman of the Georgia GOP, and I just told you that if we do, the $20 1% campaign, if we do that, that's $5 million that comes in. You can buy you can buy one of these for every single county in the state, and we can have professional meetings that sound fantastic. Next.
I don't know you, David, but in 2020, like many of you, I couldn't believe what happened on that November day, and that woke me up to, we have a problem. So what prompted you, because I know your name and I know your face from the Saturday morning calls with Garland, Favorito, and Ricardo, Voter GA has changed my life when it comes to being educated on what's going on in Georgia with elections. It's not a gossip group. It's not a group that bashes anybody. It's just facts. So that's where I saw you first. And you blew me away with your data knowledge. So what prompted you to jump into this arena, just being a private citizen, minding your own business? Why did you do what you've done for Georgia?
Okay, so I'm a man of integrity. If I see cheating, I want to call it out. We went home that night, and my wife was in the bath, and I was sitting there stunned, and I started downloading information off of the New York Times website, and I started plotting things out. You started to see like the big F shape that went up, that it was clearly fraud that was happening. And I was upset, and Sean said, you should call this guy Garland Favorito. I was like, it's late. And he answered. And our friendship started right there. And so one of the things y'all need to know about me is that anytime that I put a claim out there, I don't care if it's about election, integrity, or if it's about Josh McCune, or the way that the Georgia GOP is being handled. I always come with the receipts. I have to. In election integrity, if you put something something online that's false, or you can't back it up, you will get eaten for lunch and you will be totally and irrevocably discredited. In my business, if I lie to my clients, I lose my clients, and I lose them forever. And that's a great way to destroy a business. So I have to come with the receipts. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is from Superman. When he lands on Lois Lane's, balcony, and she says, "Why are you here?" And he says, "To fight for truth, justice, and the American way." And she laughs and she says, you're gonna end up fighting every politician in America." And he said, "I'm sure you don't mean that." And then she turns around and he says, "Lois, I never lie." That's inspired me since I was a kid. How much time do we have left?
2:37.
Awesome. Who's up?
Am I gonna be the last one? So I asked this question to the Georgians, the Truth Group, the other day. Got some good feedback from some of my friends in that group, and I figured I'd just ask you straight up. From the escalator ride to now, I've trusted Donald Trump. I trusted Donald Trump in 2018, and I voted for Brian Kemp, and we won. Again in 2020, we won. Now, whether you acknowledge it or not, that's on y'all, but we still won. I trusted him so much that I left my home in Southwest Georgia on January the 4th, 2021, and I drove up to Washington, D.C. to stand and fight with him for our country at the election justice protest on January the 6th, 2021. I trusted Donald Trump yet again in 22, and I voted against Brian Kemp in the primary, and we lost. But I trusted Donald Trump again in 24, and we saved our country. I trusted him so much that I drove my Ford pickup truck to Washington, D.C. in limp mode at 60 miles an hour there and back so that I could be there for his inauguration. I trusted that Donald Trump would start the process of righting the wrong that was done to me and so many other patriotic Americans that were persecuted and over-prosecuted for simply having the balls to stand up and call out the federal government's crimes of disenfranchising the people's vote and stealing the presidential election of 2020. I trusted him, and he delivered within hours. I'm so grateful for my party, by the way. Donald Trump has only steered me wrong once as far as winning goes against our governor, but I fully understand why. I trust President Donald Trump because he fights for me, Mr. David. You seem to have a very good plan. But why should I abandon my trust in President Trump now, after all that I've been through with him and what he's done for me?
Sure. Great question. The reason, Chuck, is because I don't think Donald Trump is fully in tune with the 50 chairmen across this country. He can't be. He's got much bigger issues to deal with. He's working on trillion-dollar business deals, in Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world. He's working on trying to fix our tax system. I don't think he really gives a whit about what's going on here. And one of the things you'll notice is that Josh McCoon was losing very badly to me. He thought I was irrelevant. He's losing terribly. And at the time that I was releasing all the information about the financial things that we were finding, that was about the time that, that I'm sure that Josh reached out to anybody he could, reach out to related with the White House and said, please, 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 get me the endorsement, all right? Donald Trump did not write that endorsement. If you look at it, that same night, 2 other ones came out. It was a copy and paste, and the president even spelled Georgia incorrectly. And if that was President Trump actually doing it, I don't think that he would spell Georgia incorrectly. I think that was done by an underling, and I'm willing to bet you anything that President Trump doesn't even know that his name is attached to Josh McCoon right now.
Anybody else? About a minute. Can you make it?
By the way, my name is all over the Trump documents. His evidence of election fraud, it's all over it. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, good evening, David Cross. I'm Juanita Carmine Cooley, and I'm a resident of Thomas County and also a delegate from Thomas County. I have some confusion about the Georgia GOP and the GOP. I feel like that one or the other is illegitimate. can you answer that question? Why do we have two parties in the state of Georgia representing Republicans?
Sure. How much time?
1
1 minute, 20 seconds. Okay. And just to finish up another thing, I mean no disrespect to the president. I believe, and you guys have seen this the same way I have, he's made endorsements of other people that make no sense, all right? And then he ends up coming back and ripping it away. I think if the president knew what was going on with the financial issues in Georgia right now, he would rip that endorsement in a heartbeat. But he doesn't know about it yet because he's got bigger things going on. Yeah. All right, so your question was about what? Yeah, the two GOP. So there's a Georgia GOP that is organized under Title 21. And if you imagine like a bunch of books on a wall, Title 21 is book number 21, and it has everything to do with election law. And way down here is a book called Title 14. It has to do with corporate law. And right now, the Georgia GOP, the only documents that are on file with the Secretary of State is under corporate law. And under corporate law, does anybody here own a company? If you own a company, you're king, all right? You get to make all decisions, all right? Under Title 21, right, if any one of you comes into the Georgia GOP and has a beef with me, I have to listen to you because you're one of the constituents. You are a member of the party. If you come to my business and want to give me a piece of your mind, I can tell you to hit the road. That's the difference. We're organized right now. We've got competing documents, and it was the Title 14 documents were put together to try and shield the party from financial disaster. But that had already happened, and that's like trying to unexplode a grenade that's already gone off.
What's the relationship?
They are supposed to be one and the same, but the issue is that the rules under Title 21 I don't believe are being followed.
All right, that ends our question and answer. Thank you. Oh gosh, thank you so much. All right, I know it is. Our next segment is each candidate will get 5 minutes to say whatever they want to say. Wrap up, rebuttal, whatever they choose. Josh, you ready for your 5 minutes? Josh, you ready for your 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Got 5 minutes.
So, thank you all for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you this evening. Just a couple of things. There's been some discussion about fiscal management of the Georgia Republican Party tonight. One thing that definitely distinguishes me from my opponent is my opponent was extremely critical of a decision I made to hire a company called Lifetime Advisors to claw back money that the Georgia Republican Party paid to the IRS in 2020. He said it was a waste of money. He said there was no way we would get any return on that investment. The IRS transmitted a check on Monday for over $300,000 to the Georgia Republican Party, money that my opponent would have thrown away. So when you think about fiscal management, you should think about that. With regard to telling the truth, it is not true that anyone came in and told me what to do with the executive director of the Georgia Republican Party. I made a decision once the current executive director decided to leave to interview people to make a hiring decision. You can ask Justin Rice, the executive director of the Georgia Republican Party, and he will tell you that is a lie. So, if the truth matters, that's the truth. With regard to being able to run this organization, it's one thing to say you've got a plan and write something down on paper. It's quite another to execute it. There's not a single state or territorial Republican Party in America that is based on the low-dollar fundraising that my opponent's talking about. And I don't blame him for thinking that's possible, because if you've never done this, you probably wouldn't think that's possible. One of the reasons President Trump is so unique was his ability to motivate and get very large numbers of small-dollar donors. But that's just not something that happens with state and territorial Republican parties. We rely on stakeholders that are willing to give at significant levels. We won't be able to participate at every level, but the idea that you're going to raise $400,000 a month off of small dollar donors just doesn't happen. There's not an example of it anywhere in the country. You also have to bring a lot of disparate people together to do this job well. And at the end of the day, when you, as my opponent has, when you call longtime Republican activists cancer, you compare them to a fatal disease, when you say that every member of the Georgia General Assembly was guilty of trading favorable votes for money, as he did in 2024, those are things that alienate key stakeholders that you need to be successful in this role. You have to understand how to raise political money in this role. I've got experience doing that. My opponent does not. So it's really important when you think about who you're going to put in this role, do they have the skills necessary to execute the plan to win? Because in my mind, success for the Georgia Republican Party in 2026 looks like this. A Republican, America First conservative replacing John Ossoff. A Republican, America First conservative occupying the Georgia Governor's Mansion. An America First conservative replacing Sanford Bishop in Georgia's 2nd Congressional District. That is what success looks like with the Georgia Republican Party. But that's only going to come if you have a team that understands how to win and that has done it before. And can't just talk about nice ideas, but understands how to execute those ideas. One other lie that you've been told. I know President Trump very well. I was the first state party chairman outside of Florida to meet with him in December of 2023. It was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, wound up being a 3-hour meeting. I was in regular contact with him throughout 2024. I'm in regular contact now with not only the president, but key members of his team. People like Steve Whitcock, the RNC chairman Michael Wiley, the chief of staff Susie Wiles. These are relationships I've built over years, and they're important and valuable relationships that matter. And you know, my opponent said President Trump doesn't really care about what happens in Georgia. That's crazy. President Trump absolutely cares about what happens in Georgia. It's his best opportunity to expand his Senate majority. His Senate majority right now is built on Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. We can give him an America First conservative. We can make sure that we keep a majority in the U.S. Senate. We also have one of the, in my opinion, best pickup opportunities in America by flipping Georgia 2, which is going to be so important because usually in the midterm, you lose congressional districts. So we got to find places to add to the House majority because we don't want to spend the last 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency with him facing impeachments. So I know how to do this job. I've done it for the last 2 years. That's why President Trump has endorsed me. It's why I'm his choice to lead this party for 2 more years. For those of you that are going to be delegates in Dalton, I'd be honored to have your vote. My name is Joshua Coon, and I want to be your state party chairman. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
All right. I'm very excited that the chairman is getting $300,000 back. He didn't raise that money. That was money that was due back to us that could have been retrieved by a qualified CPA. We did not need to pay somebody, a firm out there, $18,000 to go try and retrieve it. Any qualified CPA could have done it. Our treasurer could have done it, right? But it was money that had been left over back in 2020. Number two, you know, I run a $100 million business, right? I'm accustomed to big numbers. You know, he says that we can't start small, right? That's one of the things Donald Trump did when he was first running, is he said he wanted to collect money from small donations. That's where you start. In the Georgia GOP, that is the way that we're going to build trust. That is the litmus test. The litmus test is whether or not the people in this room think that the Georgia GOP is going to be a good custodian of their money and take care of it, not waste it. As far as communication goes, there was never a meeting of the executive committee to give any of us a heads up on the expenses, you know? And it wasn't just one health club membership expense. There were 5 of them for $479 per month. There was a Brooks Brothers charge where apparently our chairman, who makes $250,000 a year, had a bow tie crisis and went to Brooks Brothers and pulled out the company card because he wasn't smart enough to have Apple Pay on his phone to be able to pay for things like normal people have got. The chairman talks about making calls to bring in $10,000 checks, okay? That's wonderful. That's thinking too small. That's thinking 30 years ago. I know donors that are out there that will write a check for $100,000, and I know a lot of them that will do it. But they are not going to do it if they don't trust that the money that they give is going to be taken care of. Going back to the financial stuff, I stopped at 12 different incidences of things that we found. It's ridiculous the amount of money that has been spent. And here's the thing, I told you I have to bring receipts every time I bring something. If there's something that's out there that I thought was even 10% could be attributed to official party business, I wasn't going to bring it out. I've only brought things that are 100% bona fide. The only way that we can unite this party is to invite people. There are kids that are on the ball field right now that have been playing on the ball field for a long time. And there's a lot of bullies on the ball field. Yes, I call the Frost family in the GRA a canter on the Georgia GOP, because Brant Frost IV is a heavy hand, and he wields that power. We don't need that. What we need is everybody to get along well together. If you can't get along on the ball field, then the Democrats are going to come along and they're going to take away the whole playground. We can't have that. We will lose if that happens. I want to build an organization that we can all be proud of. Again, we don't even have a reserve fund right now. Does anybody here have extra savings account, on the sideline in case there's an emergency? We don't have one of those. That's mind-boggling to me. 1 minute left, all right. And then, Josh McCoon, he completely misheard me a few minutes ago. I didn't say that Trump doesn't care about Georgia. I said he doesn't care about who is running the Georgia GOP right now. And if President Trump knew what was happening in the Georgia GOP right now, he would pull his endorsement. I am 100% certain of that, without question. We've got a lot of work to do. Hopefully, I can get everybody in here engaged and working with me. I got a lot of passion. I got a lot of energy. I run a very successful company. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't know my way around a balance sheet. I'm David Cross. I want to be your businessman who's running the business of the party. Thank you.
Oh, it has been a week. Thank you, Josh, if you can hear me. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, David and Sean, for joining us. This beautiful sound system is from our very own Glenn.
Sean, for joining us. This beautiful sound system is from our very own.
That is weird. That's weird. Glenn Waters, this is his sound system. We are on the hunt for our own. If you want to give toward our microphone fund, we would love that, because this is not a cheap piece of equipment, but much needed, so thank you. Timekeepers, I love y'all. Thank you so much, Miss Caroline. Thank you for being our doorkeeper. Y'all, we've got so much snacks over here. Please take it. Grab and go. So grab it and go, because it's not going on with me. The hands, thank you for coming. I know that y'all drove a long way. They came from Macon today, and now they got to drive back. Wow. To near Macon, so thank y'all for coming. Y'all get the prize besides the costs from coming the farthest. Thank y'all again. Thank you for coming. It's been a great evening. I can now rest and sleep tonight. I love my little Thomas County group and our District 2. I'm so excited to jump in there and try to get more involved. And we're just thankful that you care enough and you came tonight. So thank you. Good night.